you very much also for inviting Susan to come to the Netherlands and to tell her story to all of us, because it's an incredible story. It's a story about somebody who had a very, very traumatic event in her life and dealt with it in a very special and personal way. And in the end, managed to help numerous people in Uganda and inspire people from all over the world. I can tell the whole story because I know it by heart, but Susan herself does that a lot better. So I would like to give the floor to Susan Kigula and invite you to listen to what she has to tell us. Thank you.
Hello, I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you for welcoming me, and I bring greetings from my country, Uganda, and from my family, most especially. Yeah. I am Susan Kigula from Uganda, who spent 16 years on death row in Uganda over crime that I did not commit. I am very inspired myself too, wherever I stand before people who have come to listen to my story, because wherever I share my story, it's a part of my healing, and as well I feel good when I positively impact into the lives of others using my story. Just like you or just like anyone, and I'm seeing most of the audience were having women, young ladies, yes. I had dreams. I grew up in a family of 6 children. My mom and my dad got married when they were still young. And then my mom had to go back to college to finish her studies. Meanwhile, she comes back, she gives birth to a child, she goes back, and then my dad would take care of us. So, being the first girl in my family, but of course the second born, because I had my brother, he passed on last year, but when he was still young. But as a first girl, I was daddy's favorite. You know, usually they say girls are very close to their dads, and dads have that special bond with their little girls. So my dad loved me so much, and we could move together in some places. And I remember when he would show me off to his friends, at times, look at my little girl, she's beautiful, isn't it? She's very intelligent, and I would feel so proud of my dad that he would be proud of me at such a tender age. And I would ask mature questions too, and he would even wonder. So one day, we were out walking and visiting folks in our neighborhood, and he asked me, Susan, oh yes, Daddy, tell me, what do you want to be in the future? Well, I want to be a banker. Reason? I want to get so much money that they bring in the bank and then give it to you so that you take care of us. To me, I thought that when you work in a bank, you have access to this so much money that is deposited in the bank. And why did I want to be a banker, and why did I want to get that so much money to give to my dad? Because we grew up in a poor family. Both my parents were primary school teachers, and primary school teachers are not paid so very highly. And at one time, my dad was laid off, and then my mom remained the breadwinner of the home. And so we were quite struggling financially, but they kind of managed to put us in school. In Uganda, you have to to pay for your school, for your studies. So they had to pay for all of us to study. And I was looking at this situation, and young as I was, I wanted to help out. I wanted to do something for the family. When I was 16 years and I had just finished my ordinary level, you go from primary, you study 7 years, primary level, then you study 4 years, what we call ordinary level, and after ordinary level, you study 2 years advanced level, and then you go to university. So I had finished my ordinary level, and then I was sat down by my parents, and they told me, Susan, look here, we're unable to continue with you because you're now grown and you see that we're struggling financially. We don't have money to continue to pay for you, but we want to continue to pay for your siblings so that they can also reach a certain level. And you never know, in the future you may want to go back to school, and then you can afford when you can afford. And I was a very brilliant girl in school. It did not go well with me, but I understood the situation. And so that's how I dropped out of school. And then what next? The next step was for me to look for a job. And I went to the city. I stayed with some of my relatives, and then I got a job to work in a shop. And as you know, that free life, when I was 18, I got a boyfriend. And he didn't have money. He was not rich, though. But he loved me. And so I got pregnant. I didn't plan for it, but I got pregnant. And then I had my baby girl. We were staying together with my boyfriend. And then we were happy, yeah. I did not delve so much into what he was doing, his businesses and all that. I was quite young, and way too young. He was 10 years older than me, so I didn't ask much. One fateful night, we had our home, a 2-roomed house, and one night we had dinner and we went to sleep happily. And I was told that it was around 3 a.m., according to the people who had the alarms and who took me to hospital, because I did not plan to say that time. But one fateful night that changed my life forever, I was woken up by a sharp instrument on my neck. I woke up, and because there was darkness, I could not understand what was going on. I did not know that I've been badly cut. I just ran off, and looking out, I saw light, and the door was wide open. And I felt a warm fluid coming out of my neck, and like I was getting it and trying to understand what has happened. And then when I went out, I saw blood was oozing out of my body all over. And then I fell down. I had no strength, and I lost consciousness. And I had been badly cut, as you can see this scar. I was rushed to the hospital. And when I reached the hospital and they worked on me, in the morning when I woke up, I was told what had happened, and they told me, the media called him my husband. We were not married, but yeah, it's okay. My husband, your husband has died. He did not make it to the hospital. So you're lucky you survived narrowly. Oh my God, I could not believe. I could not believe that the man I loved, the father of my child, died just like that, in such a horrible way. And the people who killed him, I don't know why they did it. Because they did not take anything. No, we didn't have much. They just took his life, and they just wanted both of us dead. Thank you, Frans. After 3 days of his burial, my family was taking me to the hospital because I had to be supported. I could not support myself. And then I was with my father in the car. I was with my sister, my little girl. We were stopped by the police car. And they told us that the relatives of the late have complained, opened up a case, that they think I'm the one who killed my husband. And they said, why didn't I die? Because we were two in the house. I couldn't believe myself. What is happening to me now? I'm still trying to mourn the man I loved, and I'm being arrested. My dad tried to explain to the police, but they could not listen, and the policewoman pulled me away. My daughter was crying, my mama, but then they took me away to the police. And I stayed in the police for 2 months because I was very weak. My relatives had to come every morning to take me to the doctor and bring me back. And the police were confused. How are we going to charge such a person? Look at her. Every time they were confused. And the people who had put me in prison had money. So they managed to corrupt the police. Because one day a police officer told my father, give me money and I release your daughter. And because we grew up in a Christian family and strongly believe in justice, my dad told him that my God is going to set her free and he knows the truth. And he told him, okay, wait for your God. So after 2 months, I was taken to the court and charged. I was now being charged of murder. And I was taken to the prison. I stayed in prison for 2 years on remand. And then after 2 years, I was very glad when I was told that I was going for my trial. I knew justice is going to be served. Because when I was growing up, I trusted in my judicial system. And I trusted the judges. I knew these judges are like God. They can never sentence anyone to any kind of punishment if that person is purely innocent. I thought that everybody who goes to prison must have committed a crime. And I strongly believed that all those people in prison are criminals. So I judged them harshly as well, until when it happened to me. So when still I went before the judge, I was very confident he would see the truth. I saw false witnesses being brought in to testify falsely against me. I still trusted the system. He brought my little stepson. He was 3 years when the incident happened. Him and my daughter were woken up in the morning of the incident. They did not know what happened. The neighbors bathed them. There was so little even to understand what was happening. And these relatives of the letter bringing this little boy, after coaching him to say, he saw me killing my husband. I have nothing against that little boy because he was just used to malice me. And he's an angel actually, yeah. But still, I did not expect the judge to convict me over evidence of a little boy. I thought he would really see that, really, how could this boy stay awake the whole night, I mean? How? But when the day of judgment came, I stood in the dock, just like I'm standing before you. And the judge started reading the judgment. And then he concluded by saying, Susan Kigula, I find you guilty. And therefore I sentence you to suffer death. Death by hanging. Yeah. I couldn't believe. No. I tried to understand it, but I couldn't. It's like something had hit me hard. How? I mean, how? How do I get sentenced? Why? I did not commit this crime. God knows. I have never been a criminal all my life. I was brought up well. I had dreams, I had aspirations, and everything came to an end, just like that. And I was sentenced to death over a crime I did not commit. And now here I was waiting for my fate. Sorry. And that's when I realized that not everyone who is in prison is a criminal. Not everyone who is found guilty has committed the crime. Not everyone who is in prison deserves to be in prison. And I was taken to the death row section where I was supposed to wait for my fate. And executions in Uganda are carried out by hanging. I could figure out how they are going to come hang me. For nothing, my baby girl, my daughter. So when I arrived on the death row, I met other women who were going through, some of them through what I went through. Some of them were innocent, just like me. They were confused. And others who were really guilty, had committed crimes of passion, defending themselves from abusive husbands, from rapists, from battery. So I realized that none of them really deserved to be on death row. We were crying day in, day out. We were bitter, we were angry because we were looking at our justice system and what it had done to us, and we saw it as unfair. But then after months went by, a year, I realized that remaining bitter, remaining angry is not helping me at all, because it had robbed me of any peace. And then I decided that now I think I need to do away with this feeling that I'm feeling. I need to forgive even when no one has asked me to forgive. I need to rise up, to stand up. I believe in myself. I am not a criminal, so I refuse to live like a criminal. And after a while, I decided to forgive, to put away bitterness and anger and resentment, and I felt peaceful. I felt at peace with myself. And then now time has come for me to also give peace, hope to my other fellow women in prison. So I started also sharing with them how I found this peace, and some embraced it, some were still in too much pain and agony to understand that. But I was now their leader. However, I was the youngest because I went to prison when I was only 20 years. And now I realized that most of them had not understood their court proceedings because few of them had gone to school, and majority never went to school. They were taken into their marriages through these forced arrangements and all that stuff. In Africa, when you don't go to school, definitely they have to marry you off. So I decided that I should now empower myself and these women through education, and that's what I did. I requested for permission from the prison authorities, and the men in the prison were studying. They had classes, they had teachers, but women were left out, and I wondered why. So I requested that I start a school in prison, and the prison administration were reluctant. How? I mean, women to study? No. But I insisted for 2 years, and I was allowed to start a school. And in that school, I also started studying for my advanced level. We had the trees. I don't know who's on the camera, because we had the trees. We didn't have classes. Those are our classes. So each tree was a class. And I got my other colleagues who helped me to teach. We started teaching, and then I also studied, and we got study materials from people from outside who could support us. We didn't have teachers then. Yeah, and after 2 years of going through my advanced level, I emerged one of the best students in my country, because we sit at the same examinations with other schools in the country. And then the media now started talking good about me. Susan, the bright girl, there is potential in prison. Susan, the genius, and everyone was now excited that women in prison can study. Oh, that's awesome. And then I was ready to join university, but I had no means because I couldn't start a university in prison. It is way too much for me. Then I had my friend, a friend called Alexander McLean. He's a British lawyer and a magistrate. And throughout those years, he had been coming in prison, encouraging us and setting for us a library, supporting the women who give birth in prison. And so he came. This time he heard my achievement, and he told me, Susan, good news. Oh, okay, what is it? He told me that I'm going to get you a scholarship to study, but it is going to be on a distant learning program. You're going to study from the University of London. And I was like, okay, wow, amazing, wonderful news. So what am I going to study? What are they offering me? Because I have also choices. And he told me law. Law? No. No. I refused law because I did not. Thank you very much. That's so helpful of you. Thank you. Yeah, and because I didn't trust anything to do with law, I had distrusted the entire judicial system in my country. I hated lawyers, I hated judges, I hated the courts, I hated law altogether because of what I had gone through. And he was like, okay, what do you think? And I told him, okay, if only they can offer me other courses apart from law, I'll be happy. He went back to the UK, and after a while he came back. This time when I was called in the officer's office, I saw boxes of books very many boxes. Okay. And he was seated there. Oh, Susan, hooray, good news. Okay, yes, what? And he told me, well, here is your identity card. The University of London has enrolled you. You're now their student. Oh, this is amazing, wonderful. Okay, what course have they given me to study? Law. This time, I was like, McLean, you're not serious. I told you I don't want to study law. I can't do it. Take back these books. And he told me, well, Susan, listen to me. I know you don't want to study law because of your experience with the legal system in your country. But equally, I've seen you and what you've been able to do for other women in prison. I strongly believe if you study law, you're going to be able to help yourself, help others, and you're going to bring a difference in your country and all over the world. That statement can never leave my mind and my heart. I thought about it. Okay, yeah. What have I done? I've been able to help them. Oh, those are the archives in our courts. Yeah. And I thought about it and I said, okay, let me try it. But again, also the University of London was a little bit skeptical and they were not very sure whether a prisoner can study law from prison. Okay, but we are going to start with her on a diploma level. And so I embarked on my study journey with so much complications and many challenges that I went through. I was the only woman studying law. I was studying under a tree. I didn't have a teacher, a lecturer. I did not have internet. I didn't have a computer. All the research that I was supposed to do on the internet, I had to read it. They had compressed everything in reading material. So I had to read extensively. I had to have self-discipline. I determined in my heart that, okay, I'll do it. And I said, since I've set this goal, I'm going to achieve it. My fellow prisoners couldn't understand why I was studying law when I'm on death row. Some warders could mock me. You're studying law. We are going to escort you to the gallows to be executed. So why waste your time? And at times they could come and tell me, once you're inside, you don't waste our time. You're studying law for what? You're going to leave those books here. But I refused to listen to any negativity. I focused. I looked forward. This time, I refused the circumstances and situations I was going through to determine my future. This time, I saw hope. I saw a light at the end of the tunnel. And when I sat for the examinations, which are sent in from London through the Ugandan National Examination Board, invigilated by the examination board itself, sending officers to me, and sent back the examinations. When they came back, the results, I was among the best 30, including on-campus students. Wow, I couldn't believe myself. And the university were really very excited and appreciated it. And that's when they said, now we're going to extend the scholarship so that you study for a law degree. Because now we've seen you're able, you're capable. And in that process, as I embarked again to study for my law degree, yes, I took it up and studied, and I used my legal knowledge to help other prisoners. I started an informal legal aid clinic in prison, and I could receive 10, 20 women a day who could come in to get legal counseling. They needed that legal information on how they could represent themselves in court because they didn't have money, just like I. They didn't have money to afford good lawyers. And so I had to take them through self-representation. those convicted, I had to write for them appeals. And those who are still for trial, I had to prepare their trial for them, write for them their defense, guide them through. So I saw many of them getting back their freedom, and others who were convicted to lesser sentences than they would get if they had no knowledge of what the court termed as legal representation. They could leave me in prison, but I was very happy. I was very excited. I knew my time would come. I knew that now I have started to do something to help my fellow women, even when I'm still in prison. Even some prison officers could now come to me when they had issues in their marriages, you know. And they ask me, "Oh, Susan, I need to see you." "Okay, I don't want people to see." "All right, you come." "What is it?" "Oh, I have this problem in my marriage. How do I solve it legally?" You know, and I could still guide them through on how to go about their issues in a legal way. And in the same prison, I started a choir because singing is my hobby. I do sing well, though don't ask me to sing for you. But I have a very beautiful voice when I sing. And so I started a choir in prison, and we could sing about anything. I could write songs about the death penalty. I could write songs about HIV/AIDS, church music. It was already beautiful. It was a way of healing. It brought us together. We could share now through music. And then the choir became very famous. And the media could come in prison to record our music, and they could play it on television stations and radio stations. And actually, one time we were taken out of the prison to sing, to present a very big conference that was held in our city and brought back in prison. So that was a great achievement for us. And throughout my years in prison, as we sent in the message on the death penalty, pleading to the government, yes, we knew some had committed crimes, but of course some had not committed crimes. Yeah. And what was the purpose of having them in prison? And so also some other groups out there had applied, and they started also engaging the government and other stakeholders, the civil societies. But then nothing was coming out. We were 417 prisoners on death row. And one day, we petitioned the Constitutional Court. And the famous case is called Susan Kigula and 417 others, a case that I led, the first of its kind in Uganda, I would say in Africa, or I don't know. But it was so foreign to our legal system, because prisoners coming out and challenging the government and the law, it was, and a woman, oh, Ian will tell you, I was so small, I was still young, I have grown. And I was leading that petition. I was the face of that petition, and I was in courts all the time. Of course, we had some lawyers supporting us in legal representation. We had other civil societies supporting us, but it was our petition. And so we went through a series of trials and judgments, and then appeals and cross appeals, because the government also put up a fight. They did not want the death penalty to be removed from our law books. And for us, we were contending against the death penalty, mandatory death sentences, the manner in which it is carried out by hanging. We had a signed affidavit from one of the death row inmates who was then a prison officer. He witnessed executions, because you can't go to the execution and you come back to tell the story. But of course, the officer in charge witnesses when they are hanging people. And so he told the court and us that at one point when one is not heavy enough for the rope, they add sand in the overall so that the person may be heavy enough. At one point, they add too much sand, and this person becomes very heavy, and the rope chops off the head. And the head falls that side, the body this side, and blood gushes all over. And these others who are still waiting in the cells, they see blood coming, and it is so horrifying. It is such a sin, and that is why we petition the court and say the way these executions are carried out, it is so inhuman, it is so horrible, so cruel, so degrading. If you have to execute someone, do it in a more humane way, if that's what you want. And so we were also contending against mandatory death sentences, and that meant that mandatory death sentences are where a person is found guilty and sentenced to death automatically without putting into consideration the circumstances of the commission of the offense. For example, if a woman has been attacked by rapists and they are raping her, and she fights back, and in the process she kills a rapist, and she's produced in court, you murdered someone, and so we sentence you to death automatically. We don't want to know whether you are defending yourself, whether someone was trying to rape you. So those were the mandatory death sentences. And all the 417 death row inmates, death row prisoners in Uganda, we had been sentenced under mandatory death sentences. We find you guilty, don't say anything, go and die. And in the last judgment from the Constitutional Supreme Court of Uganda, we finally got our ruling, and mandatory death sentences were abolished in Uganda and declared unconstitutional. And that was one of the greatest achievement that we got in the history of Ugandan laws, because that meant that the law of Uganda has now changed for better. However, death sentences remained constitutional, and the judges held that it was not in their mandate to scrap off the death penalty, but they elected the legislators on rules and laws which they can employ to scrap it off from our law books. And the period one used to spend on death row before one is executed was pretty long. People could stay on death row for more than 20, 30 years and still get executed. And so the court said no. If a prisoner or a death row prisoner exhausts his appellate court, in 3 years, if the government does not execute, that prisoner has to be forgiven. And he has to serve life imprisonment. So that changed as well. So most of us who had been sentenced, who were on death row, who were now off the hook. No one was going to be killed, to be hanged. And people had spent more than 20 years on death row, and it was automatically, they were released, because even when they were committed to serve life imprisonment, then it was 20 years, and they had to leave prison. I was taken to the men's section to see the change, the impact that I had brought in the lives of these people fighting for their lives, and I saw many were released, and it was so awesome. I came out of prison in 2016 after going back to my sentencing judge, because another clause said that those who are still in appellate court should go back for resentencing. And I was resentenced, and in 2016, I came out of prison. But I'm happy to tell you that now I graduated with my law degree, and I'm now a lawyer as I stand before you right now. Thank you for listening to me. I'm happy to get questions from you.
And thank you very much, Susan, for your very impressive story. Very impressive story. It was very silent, and I think people listened with a lot of attention. And let's start asking questions or make remarks. Is there somebody who has a first remark or question? It takes some courage to be the first one, of course. Yes, over there.
How did it change your life, all of this?
Pardon?
How did it change your life?
How did it change your life?
How did I change my life?
How did you change your life?
No, how did all of what happened to you change?
Yeah. What did it change?
Yeah.
How do you look at life when you experience such terrible things?
Okay, how did I change my life when I was going through such? Oh, thank you very much. First of all, I had to encourage myself in God, because I'm a brave, I'm a Christian. And two, I had to leave. I decided to leave. Leaving is a decision one makes. I decided to leave. Why? I had left out my one-year-old daughter, and I needed to leave for her. I needed her one day to be proud of me. So that gave me strength to go on. And I drew hope from my inner strength. And then that's how I trekked, I survived, and I walked my journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question. There are also people who follow the meeting online, and they probably have some questions as well. Not
No?
yet, not yet. Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it is absolutely incredible that you are standing here and telling us about your experiences. So I'm very grateful to hear all about it.
Thank you.
And to see the change that you indulged. My question is, here in Europe, we no longer sentence any prisoners to death. But do you still think that here in Europe we can learn something from this experience, from your country and what you have achieved?
Fantastic question. Thank you very much. First of all, I take your compliment with pleasure. Thank you. Yes, why am I coming here to Europe, to Holland, where you don't have the death penalty? One thing I want you to learn from my experience is that just like me, there are people out there or out here who thought that everyone who is in prison must have committed a crime. Everyone who is in prison is a criminal. I want you to change that perspective and know and understand that there's so many people who are in prison who have just been victims of injustices or abortion of justice, who are in prison because of corrupt systems, because of corrupt political regimes. There are so many people in prison just because they are poor. They cannot afford a good lawyer to defend them. And secondly, why am I speaking about the death penalty in a country which doesn't have a death penalty? I want to caution you, Holland and Europe, don't be so sure, because you are now the future generation we're having. Most of your generation have never heard about the death penalty. And if we carry out an opinion poll right now, we will be surprised that majority, highest percentage, want the death penalty back. And so when we are old or gone, we don't want to be surprised that Holland reinstated the death penalty. We want to implore you and show you the impact, the dangers of having a death penalty in a country. And we do believe that two wrongs don't make a right. Even if someone has committed an offense, when we kill that person, we rob them of the opportunity of reconciling with himself and the people he offended and coming to terms with what he or she did. We also rob the victim of the opportunity of forgiving the offender, because I forgave, not because someone asked me to for forgiveness, but for my own peace. You never know, victims out there want to forgive people who wronged them, but if you kill them, they may live with that guilt forever, that, oh, I wish I had a chance to forgive him when he was still living. And also we rob the society of the opportunity of having a changed offender coming back to society and serving the society in a better way. Every human being has a capacity to change. That's all I want you to know. Thank you.
Well, in the Netherlands, we have the irreversible life sentence still. One of the 2 countries in Europe. And in Belarus, we still have the death penalty. In the presentation of Siska, we will say more about the irreversible life sentence.
Yeah.
Okay?
I carry on, Jan.
What I would like to add concerning the question that you posed is what struck me tremendously is what one single person can accomplish. I mean, as you put it, roll up your sleeves and get dirty. And my goodness, one single person can have such an impact. I mean, to me, that is incredibly encouraging. So I think that is relevant no matter whether there's a death penalty or what penalty or whatever. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
On, let's say, a personal note.
Thank you.
I hope it adds also to your thinking about this kind of topics.
Susan, in Holland you have, if people cannot pay an advocate, then the state pays it. You are helping out now people who can't afford a lawyer. So how do you get paid somehow? Is there some sort of, is the state funding you, or are you doing all kinds of different jobs?
Thank you for that question. Right now in Uganda, I work with children of prisoners, street children, and orphans. And in that organization, I provide them with education, medication, a home, and all the basics, because I do believe that they deserve to live happily, they deserve to live a normal life. They don't have to pay for their parents' mistakes. And I also support women who have been in prison for so many years in their integration back to society. It's quite a challenge because they are not accepted back in society, and they have a challenge of finding work or jobs. So I try to help them by connecting to people I know whether they have jobs, going there to explain, and trying to find them a home. Maybe if someone can help house this person for a few months before she finds her own home, and it's pretty difficult for me. But legally, I am working with a group of lawyers. I reach out to lawyers who have good hearts, and we try to help poor people in prison who have very serious cases and they cannot afford a lawyer. And I try to speak to them to give pro bono services, free services. Of course, it is not easy. Of course, they ask for money for transport, for fuel, for these files and all that. And I don't have that money. Some good people come in to help, to support. But of course, it's not enough. That's why we can't reach everyone. And I implore anyone who can come in to support, to come in. But I don't have to wait for the funds. I don't have to wait for the money to help. I need to get my hands dirty, just like he already. I usually see, I roll up my sleeves and get myself dirty for others, because I have already gotten the opportunity of being out of prison. I feel I should do something for others who are still in prison. Maybe when they also come out, they can do something. Together we can achieve. So that's how we are. Yeah.
Okay.
On the way.
I was wondering, what would you say is the hardest thing about studying law? And also, thank you for your presentation. It was very wonderful.
Please, could you please repeat?
What was the hardest thing about studying law, would you say?
What is the hardest thing about studying law? Thank you. Oh, well, the hardest thing about studying law is lack of commitment and lack of self-discipline. Just that. Work on that. And you'll study law. Yeah. If you commit yourself, if you exercise self-discipline, you have to have priorities when you're studying law. You have to know that you don't have to go along with every kind of fun that comes your way. You have to prioritize certain things in your life for you to fully study law, because law is really very complex. It needs a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of understanding, and if you don't do that, you cannot manage. Yep. Thank you.
Could people who raise their hand who are studying law right now? Over here? Okay, thank you. Well,
what's that?
They're your colleagues, your future colleagues.
Oh, they are
studying law, all those people.
Wow, you will make it. If I did, you will too.
So you see, you have to work.
Yes.
Students.
Sure.
Huh? Are there any other questions? Yes.
Have you ever felt that being female and a female lawyer makes people not take you that serious simply because you're a female?
Thank you. Well, in my career, apparently, I've not yet experienced that because of what I have achieved. Men look at me and they're like, we cannot even achieve what she has achieved. So I carry that respect wherever I go, and they are open to learn from me, you know. Yes, so I know other female lawyers go through such, but because of what I've been able to achieve, men also look at me as an inspiration, as a motivator, as an example to them. My fellow male lawyers highly respect me. Thank you.
I was wondering, how did your daughter experience all of this?
How?
How did your daughter experience all of this?
Wow, thanks. My daughter, that's another story, but briefly, when she was 6 years, she asked my mom, because my mom, by the time I came out of prison, both my parents had died, so I never found them alive. And they were taking care of my daughter before they died. But I remember when she was 6, she started asking questions. And mom could tell her that I am in a school. So wherever they would come to visit me in prison, mommy would tell her that, look, your mom is in a school, don't you see? She has a uniform. They all have uniforms. And so when she was around 6, 7, she got so curious. And when she came back, she asked, but mommy, why are your teachers dressed like policemen? And these were the prison guards. And her mind had started knowing that they are policemen. And she was like, your teachers are dressing up like policemen. And so I told her, I will explain to you, but I think they love it that way. So when she grew up, we started explaining to her bit by bit according to what her brain could take in. And when she grew up, because by the time I came out of prison, she was 17 years, already a teenager, and she had understood everything. One thing I emphasized to her was not to hold a grudge, not to hate, and to forgive. So as she was growing up, I emphasized that she forgives and doesn't hold anybody for my being in prison, because I didn't want her to be negative in life. I wanted her to have peace and to lead her own life. So she's very fine, and we have a very wonderful relationship. Thank you.
Good questions.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for your story. After experiencing all of this, looking back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, looking back, if only I was a lawyer then, I would have represented myself in court. If only I had money to afford a good lawyer, I think I would do well in my trial and not get a conviction. That's what I always want to take back. Yep. Thank you.
Over there.
You talk about a corrupt system. How did you get the corrupt system to listen to you?
Thank you. The corrupt system is still there. It doesn't listen except if you stand up and fight legally. Yeah. So if you coward and you're cowardizing, I knew that the judges respected and were afraid of, I would phrase it like this: the president or the government is the appointing authority of the judges, and they have that allegiance to them. So we come with a case where we're challenging the government, and it was before these judges who know very well that the government is their appointing authority. But at one time, we were lucky that we had the Chief Justice who exercised some bit of independence, and were very grateful because the world was looking. This was a famous case. It was broadcasted, and his reputation was at stake. So that's how we got them to listen. Thank you.
We have time for one other question, the last one. Is there somebody who wants to? And the second one as well.
I'll just go again. When you started this presentation, you said, when I was younger, I had dreams. Do you still have dreams after all this?
Yes, I do. I still dream, and it's healthy to keep on dreaming. Though the dreams I had of being a banker were put aside, and now I know that even when you work in a bank, it's not automatic that you're going to have stacks of money. But I still have a dream of seeing the whole world free of the death penalty. I have a dream of seeing justice served in the world. I have a dream of seeing that innocent people don't go to prison. And those in prison, they get justice. Thank you.
Have you ever met the judge that convicted you for the death penalty after you got out of prison?
Thank you. He died before I met him. I think he served the death sentence. He died. I never met the. He was asking whether I met the judge who convicted me innocently. He died.
He died.
So,
but when he was still alive, would you want to meet him?
I would have loved to meet him, but he died.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I know. What would you ask him when you met him?
I would just ask him how he felt when he was sentencing me to death, and I'm very sure that he pretty knew I was innocent. But I've forgiven him. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being there and all the very good questions that you asked.